Hello everyone, it's OTAs. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to do a tier list of the main countries of the First World War and the performances and how good the militaries were overall. So I'm not going to include these countries, Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia, and Belgium, because my recorder has a 10-minute limit, so I cannot talk about all of the countries. But I'm just going to talk about the main countries and I hope you enjoy. By the way, just take my opinions with a grain of salt because, well, it's just my opinion. So, I still know a lot of knowledge. Just to give you some sources of books I read about the First World War, include Technology of World War One by Stuart Ross and Questioning History, the Western Front by Nicola Barbers. So, I do know a lot of knowledge. I research a lot in depth about the First World War, and also to give you another source on YouTube, there's the channel named The Great War, which also talks about World War One mainly. So yeah, I know a lot about the First World War, even though I'm just a kid. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this tier list. Like, it's rare to see a Gen Z kid actually talk about the First World War because I'm one of the rare ones out there, right, who actually loves and knows history. Well, the others are like, wait, Bulgaria fought in World War One? Like kids generally get confused, and I, I'm just on another level of understanding compared to my school in history. So yeah, I'm lucky, I guess. But alright, I'm just gonna stop yapping, and actually, we're just gonna talk about the tier list now. Let's begin. So first there's Germany. So Germany, oh my god, I made so many recordings, bro. I'm losing my breath. I think I'm gonna die. I think I need more oxygen. I have oxygen addiction, by the way. Lol. Anyway, I made like 20 recordings of this video, bro. No, seriously though. Like, you gotta thank me for that. I do hard work to make videos for y'all because I care for y'all. But yeah, so we're gonna start with German Empire. I'm not gonna lie, German Empire. So they were part of the losing team of the First World War, even though it was armistice, which means like like both of the sides had a equal end to the war. Like none of them directly surrendered. Still, Germany kind of lost the war because of the terms of Treaty of Versailles. Like they did terrible, alright, bro. Like by the end of the war, they lost so much manpower. Manpower. Lol, I meant manpower. So they lost a lot of manpower after the Ludendorff offensive from March 1918 and heavy casualties inflicted upon them. So they were technically just losing the war. And even a revolution happened and the Kaiser had to abdicate. But at the end of the day, they were the best because the military was so good. The army was the best, and the air force was also decent. Like, it was one of the best air force, and they had perfectly the best army. They had 10 million soldiers, and they were armed with very good weapons, and they had heavy victories, which means, yeah, they did really good. And even how they lived, and like overall, I'm just gonna say it. So the trench systems were the probably the German ones were the best because first of all was sophisticated, well defended, and it was just really good compared to the allied ones because the allied ones were on a strategy of attack and the Germans were on a strategy of defense. So they managed to do really well and had lower casualties compared to the allies. I kind of like, I guess, like, I'm just gonna search it up. Bro, okay, what happens if I search Wikipedia? It still comes up, of course. I'm so lucky I'm using like Google and some Google Docs. Like Google Docs won't even understand. Lol. Anyway, so World War One, bro. Why did I? Oh my! Okay, I accidentally clicked World War Two. In World War One, overall they like mobilized a lot of soldiers. About so total they had over 8 million, which surprisingly is actually lower than the Allied counterparts. And they also mobilized a total of around 15. Actually, Russians mobilized 50 million and Germans mobilized 10 million, but still they had a very decent air force. And like they had the best army overall. It's better than the Russian one, even though the Russian one had 5 million more. The German one was just the best. The weapons like the Mauser rifle and the MZ-0815 were very good. Alright, like seriously, and even the innovations like the anti-tank rifle and monoplanes and stuff, they were very good. Alright, so they even had the second best army, and they had lots of submarines, and overall they thrived in the war with lots of victories. So next there's Britain, which is the second best. So Britain is not the best because they treated the soldiers harshly, unlike the German ones. Even though the German ones had harsh training, they still had lots of more freedom compared to the British ones. A bit, I guess, because the German ones had a bit more manpower and a larger population, so the German army was overall better. But the British army also thrived in the war. They managed to help Belgium greatly, and overall they did very decent in the war. And the reason that the second best is the trench systems were not good. Like they were muddy and they had lots of casualties, but overall very good. They even had a good air force. Like France is not on the list, but they had one of the best air forces, just like the Germans. But and the reason they're here is because like they had the best navy. They had 29 large warships compared to the Germans, who had only 17. So yeah, they really thrived in the war, and they did good overall. Also, I forgot to mention both of the nations had good helmets, which were practical. The German one was the best one definitely because the Stahlhelm helmet was shaped like the Pug ST, so it's pretty practical and it's necessary for the soldiers' protection. And the British had the Steel Brody, which is also really good. So yeah, good overall. And the Americans were the third best, I guess, because the Americans they thrived in the war. Okay, they did really actually they should go to Epic because they didn't mobilize way too much men, but they actually nah they're the best because they thrived in the war. They sent lots of light tanks and they did devastating attacks for the Germans. The Germans were completely devastated because Americans were kind of the ones who made the Allied powers win by the end of the war. So like they kind of made the war win, and they weren't useless, and they were necessary to the war effort for the Allied powers. So yeah, they go to Epic actually because the thing is they didn't send like lots of men, but they still had a high effect. But just to make it even for all the countries, I'm just going to put it in Epic. But overall, it's the third best country in the First World War. Next is Austria-Hungary, which is probably the worst on this list, and it will go to hell now. Even though it did good and managed to do decent offensives, it had the worst army because they were undersupplied, and communications were very difficult because the languages and ethnic races were different. They also had a revolution by the end of the war, and the country, as it had so many like nations, it just broke apart, and they were in a terrible situation. So overall, they're the worst here. And there's Russian Empire, which also is the second worst because they were underarmed and they just weren't good. Okay, because the Russians, so they had a large army. That's such a large army that all of them were underarmed, most of them. So only one third didn't have a rifle. So the Russian army also didn't do really good. The only good battles they had included the Brusilov offensive, but the others they absolutely sucked. But yeah, so like the second worst. And they also like the Russian soldiers overall were neglected and they used way too much manpower and resources. So like they couldn't probably fight the war, and yeah, they were just considered defeated after the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk.